Hello everyone and welcome back to Mach 1 Mindset. Today we're diving into AP US Government and Politics 1.5 Ratification of the US Constitution. Now before we get started, please make sure you like, subscribe, and of course comment down below if you have any questions. Let's dive into it. In the previous lesson, we saw how the Articles of Confederation failed. By 1787, it was clear that the United States needed a stronger national government. The Constitutional Convention met in Philadelphia with the original goal of revising the Articles. Instead, the delegates chose to replace them entirely. The result was the U.S. Constitution, a framework that created a stronger federal government with defined powers. But writing the Constitution was only half the battle. For it to take effect, it had to be ratified at least 9 out of 13 states. That process triggered one of the most intense political debates in American history. At the center of the debate were two opposing groups, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Federalists supported the Constitution. They argued that a strong central government was necessary to maintain order, regulate the economy, and protect the nation from internal and external threats. Key Federalists include Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay. Anti-Federalists opposed the Constitution. They feared that a powerful national government would threaten individual liberty and state sovereignty. They argued that the Constitution looked too much like the system Americans had just fought against. Before the ratification could even be discussed, the delegates at the Constitutional Convention had to resolve major disagreements about how the government would function. These disagreements produced several critical compromises. The first major conflict involved representation in Congress. Larger states supported the Virginia Plan, which proposed a bicameral legislature with representation based on population. This plan favored states like Virginia and Pennsylvania. Small states supported the New Jersey Plan, which called for equal representation in a unicameral legislature. This plan protected smaller states from being overwhelmed by larger ones. The solution was the Great Compromise, also known as the Connecticut Compromise. It created a bicameral legislature with two chambers. The House of Representatives would be based on population, favoring the larger states. The Senate would give each state 2 senators, favoring the smaller states. This compromise balanced population-based representation with state equality and remains central to American government today. Another major issue was how to choose the president. Some delegates wanted direct election by the people. Others feared mob rule. Some wanted Congress to choose the president, but that raised concern about separation of powers. The compromise was the Electoral College. Each state would receive electors equal to its number of representatives and senators. To win the presidency, a candidate must win the majority of the electoral votes. This system still exists today and continues to spark debate, especially when the popular vote and electoral vote differ. One of the most controversial compromises involves slavery. Southern states wanted enslaved people counted for representation in Congress, but not for taxation. Northern states argued that enslaved people who had no rights should not increase Southern political power. The result was the Three-Fifths Compromise, which counted each enslaved person as 3/5 of a person for both representation and taxation. This compromise increased Southern influence in Congress and the Electoral College while denying basic humanity to enslaved individuals. It also delayed confrontation over slavery, pushing the conflict into the future. Another slavery-related compromise addressed the international slave trade. Northern states wanted to ban it immediately. Southern states opposed any restriction. The compromise allowed the importation of enslaved people to continue until 1808, after which Congress would ban it. This gave slaveholding states time to strengthen their economic dependence on slavery. As the Constitution went to states for ratification, the most powerful anti-federalist argument emerged. The Constitution had no Bill of Rights. Anti-Federalists warned that without explicit protections, the new government could trample individual liberties. This concern nearly derailed ratification in key states like New York and Virginia. The Federalists responded with a critical promise. If the Constitution were ratified, they would add a Bill of Rights. That promise worked. The Bill of Rights was ratified in 1791 as the first 10 amendments. It protects freedoms such as speech, religion, press, assembly, due process, and the right to bear arms. These amendments became the cornerstone of American civil liberties and have a major limit on federal power. To promote ratification, Federalists published essays known as the Federalist Papers. Written by Hamilton, Madison, and Jay, these essays argued that the Constitution balanced liberty and order and prevented tyranny through separation of powers and checks and balances. Anti-Federalists writing under names like Brutus warned that the government would grow too powerful and too distant from the people. Ultimately, the Federalists prevailed. Once 9 states ratified the Constitution, it became supreme law of the land. The ratification process also produced Article 5, which outlines how the Constitution can be amended. Amendments can be proposed by 2/3 vote of Congress or a national convention. It must be ratified by 3/4 of the Senate. This process makes the Constitution flexible but stable. Change is possible, but only when a broad national agreement. While ratification solved immediate problems, it left major tensions unresolved. Slavery, federal versus state power, individual rights, and the role of the Electoral College continue to shape American politics today. The ratification of the Constitution was not about perfection. It was about compromise. Those compromises created a system strong enough to survive, but flexible to evolve. And that is why the Constitution still governs the United States more than 2 centuries later.